If you don't do this, you are headed for trouble. I once interviewed Jim Farley and asked him the secret of his success. He said, hard work. And I said, don't be funny. He then asked me what I thought was the reason for his success. I replied, I understand. You can call 10,000 people by their first names. No, you're wrong, he said. I can call 50,000 people by their first name. Sometimes it is difficult to remember a name, particularly it is hard to pronounce, rather than even try to learn it. Many people ignore it or call the person by an easy nickname. Sid Levy called a customer for some time whose name was Nicodemus Papadoulos. Most people just called him Nick. Levy told us, I made a special effort to say his name over several times to myself before I made my call. When I greeted him by his full name, Good afternoon, Mr. Nicodemus Papadoulos, he was shocked. For what seems like several minutes there was no reply from him at all. Finally he said, with tears rolling down his cheeks, Mr. Levy, in all the 15 years I have been in this country, nobody has ever made the effort to call me by my right name. What was the reason for Andrew Carnegie's success? The Central Transportation Company, which Andrew Carnegie controlled, was fighting with the company that Pullman owned. Both were struggling to get the sleeping car business of the Union Pacific Railroad bucking each other, slashing price, and destroying all chance of profit. Both Carnegie and Pullman had gone to New York to see the board of directors of the Union Pacific. Meeting one evening in the St. Nicholas Hotel, Carnegie said, Good evening, Mr. Pullman. Aren't we making a couple of fools of ourselves? What do you mean? Pullman demanded. Then Carnegie explained what he had on his mind. A merger of their two interests. He pictured in glowing terms the mutual advantage of working with, instead of against, each other. Pullman listened attentively, but he was not wholly convinced. Finally he asked, What would you call the new company? And Carnegie replied promptly, Why, the Pullman's Palace Car Company, of course. Pullman's face brightened. Come into my room, he said. Let's talk it over. That talk made industrial history. Most people don't remember a name for the simple reason that they don't take the time and energy necessary to concentrate it and repeat the fixed names indelibly in their minds. They make excuse for themselves. They are too busy. But, they were probably no busier than Franklin D. Roosevelt, and he took time to remember and record even the names of mechanics with whom he came into contact. Franklin D. Roosevelt knew that one of the simplest, most obvious, and most important ways of gaining goodwill was by remembering names and making people feel important. Yet, how many of us do it? Napoleon III, Emperor of France and nephew of the great Napoleon, boasted that in spite of all his royal duties, he could remember the name of every person he met. His technique? Simple. If he didn't hear the name distinctly, he said, So sorry, I didn't get the name clearly. Then if it was an unusual name, he would say, How is it spelled? During the conversations, he took the trouble to repeat the name several times and tried to associate it in his mind with the person's feature, expressions, and general appearance. All this takes time, but good manners are made up of a pretty sacrifice. We should be aware of the magic contained in a name and realize that this single item is wholly and completely owned by the person with whom we are dealing and nobody else. The name sets the individuals apart. It makes him or her unique among all others. The information we are imparting or the request we are making takes a special importance when we approach the situation with the name of the individual. Principle third, remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and the most important sounds in any language.